silence your cell phones. Thank you. We send out a special welcome to any visitors from out of town. Please stand and be recognized. Also, is there anyone who is visiting the treasure map meeting for the first time? Please stand. All right. Finally, is there anyone here who is at their first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous? Please stand and be recognized. All right. If there's anybody that's shy, we are very happy to have you here tonight. You are welcome here. If you would like, please come to the welcome table over the side here. We have a gift for you. Once again, thank you for being here with us tonight. The Treasure Map group of Alcoholics Anonymous believes in working the 12 steps as outlined in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. With a sponsor, there are many home group members here tonight that are willing to be sponsors. If you're new or don't have a sponsor, you can stop at the side table over here at the break, and we've got some names and phone numbers of home group members that are willing to be sponsors. As I said before, this is an opening meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. We are glad that you're here, especially the newcomers. In keeping with our singleness of purpose and our third tradition, which states that the only requirement for AA membership is a desire to stop drinking. We ask that all who participate confine their comments to their problem with alcohol. We want to make a special mention to our online listeners. We have heard from many of you who are trying to make your experience with us even better. Thank you for being with us tonight. If during this meeting you experience a lapse in hearing us, please post a note on our secret group Facebook page. We will be monitoring it throughout the meeting. A great way to contribute to the Treasure Map group is online. It's the way I do it, and it's just an easy way to contribute and support the Treasure Map group. You can get signed up on that. Either come and see us over at the side table during the meeting, or go to www.treasuremapmeeting.com, and you can sign up there. In addition, the Treasure Map group is a proud financial supporter of the local Sioux Falls Intergroup, Southeast South Dakota AA, District 5, AA statewide in South Dakota Area 63, and worldwide AA through World Services in New York. And if you give online, please, when the basket's passed, throw one of those in there. Also, we've got over at the side table and around, we've got the 12-step cards. Please feel to take as many of these as you need. It's a great way to pass the word on about Treasure Map, AA as a whole. You can even write your name and phone number on the back for contact information. It's a great way to pass along the message to those that are still suffering. Our free Big Book study worksheets on our website, www.treasuremapmeeting.com. Many are using these sheets to assist in their own personal workbook studies, complement their sponsorship duties, and aid in their step work. These sheets could be considered, or should not be considered, as the final word on the Big Book. Only one guide that has been helpful to us. We realize we know only a little. Okay, special events coming up. We've got a busy summer ahead. These are all listed on our homepage website, but June 22nd is the 8th annual Bike and Burgers Ride. It starts at Westside AA in Sioux Falls and goes to Brookings, and we have a lunch at Nick's Burgers. July 27th is the Treasure Map Family Picnic. We will not be having a meeting here like Mike says. How exciting is that going to be? We get to have a picnic. That's awesome. It's at McKinnon Park. We will have a birthday and speaker meeting. So it'll be the same. It's just going to be out under the stars in the beautiful sky. We'll have food at 6 at the McKinnon Park Shelter, and then the meeting is from 7 to 8:30. July 13th is the Sioux Falls Intergroup Annual Picnic at Falls Park. Do we have a time on that at all? A time on that intergroup picnic at Falls Park? 3:30? Okay, all right. We have Southside on July 13th also has their Founders Day. And let's see, we have July 20th, we have Area 63 Assembly in Pierre, South Dakota. July 19th through the 21st is the North Dakota Young People's AA in Bismarck. July 26th through the 28th, the Paha Sapa Mountain Conference in Deadwood. And August 2nd through the 4th is the Bad Axe Men's Retreat in Park Rapids, Minnesota. The Treasure Map meeting is co-sponsoring a bus trip to the International AA Convention on July 2nd through the 5th of 2020. We do have some flyers on that over on the side tables. District 5 Corrections and Treatment Committee. We're always looking for folks to run meetings at the Minnehaha County Jail, the Work Release Center, South Dakota State Penitentiary. There is a background check required and a minimum of 3 months of continuous sobriety. You can contact Matt at mcexpert.com. All right. Okay, our meeting tonight is a speaker meeting. Our speakers tonight are Dale, who is our short speaker, and we have Matt as our long speaker. Now, if you would, please help me welcome Dale, or hold on, not Dale. Felix, to read How It Works.
Felix alcoholic. How it works. Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. Those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to the simple program. Usually men and women who are constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. There are such unfortunates. They are not at fault. They seem to have been born that way. They are naturally incapable of grasping and developing a manner of living which demands rigorous honesty. The chances are less than average. There are those too who suffer from grave emotional and mental disorders, but many of them do recover if they have the capacity to be honest. Our stories disclose in a general way what we used to be like, what happened, and what we are like now. If you have decided you want what we have and are willing to go any length to get it, then you are ready to take certain steps. Some of these we balked. We thought we could find easier, softer way, but we could not. With all the earnestness of our command, we beg of you to be fearless and thorough from the very start. Some of us have tried to hold on to our old ideas, and the result was nil until we let go absolutely. Remember, we deal with alcohol, cunning, baffling, powerful. Without help, it is too much for us. But there is one who is all. who has all power. That one is God. May you find him now. Half measures availed us nothing. We stood at the turning point. We asked his protection and care with complete abandon. Here are some steps we took, which are suggested as a part of recovery, a program of recovery. 1, we admitted we are powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove these defects of character. 7, humbly ask him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only to knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we try to carry the message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Many of us exclaim, "What an order! I can't go through with it." Do not be discouraged. No one among us has been able to maintain anything like perfect adherence to these principles. We are not saints. The point is that we are willing to grow along spiritual lines. The principles we have set down are guides to progress. We claim spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection. Our description of the alcoholic, excuse me, chapter to the Gnostics in our personal adventures before and after make clear 3 pertinent ideas. A, that we were alcoholic and could not manage our own lives. B, that probably no human power could have relieved our alcoholism. And C, that God could and would if he were sought.
Thanks, Felix. Now, in keeping with 12 traditions, as we pass the baskets, thank you in advance for your generosity and support. Tradition 7 states every group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. Now help me welcome Mike to read the 12 traditions.
Mike, I'm an alcoholic. Am I reading the long form? Oh, here we go. Traditions of AA. Number 1, our common welfare should come first. Personal recovery depends upon AA unity. 2, for our group purpose, there is but one ultimate authority. A loving God as he may express himself in our group conscience. Our leaders are but trusted servants. They do not govern. 3, the only requirement for AA membership is a desire to stop drinking. 4, each group should be autonomous, except in matters affecting other groups or AA as a whole. 5, each group has but one primary purpose, to carry its message to the alcoholic who still suffers. 6, an AA group ought never endorse, finance, or lend the AA name to any related facility or outside enterprise, lest problems of money, property, and prestige divert us from our primary purpose. 7, every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting declining outside contributions. 8. Alcoholics Anonymous should remain forever non-professional, but our service centers may employ special workers. 9. AA as such ought never be organized, but we may create service boards or committees directly responsible to those they serve. 10. Alcoholics Anonymous has no opinion on outside issues. Hence, the AA name ought never be drawn into public controversy. 11. Our public relations policy is based on attraction rather than promotion. We need always maintain personal anonymity at the level of press, radio, and films. 12. Anonymity is the spiritual foundation of all of our traditions, ever remind us to place principles or personalities.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, we talk a lot about home group membership at the Treasure Map Group because we believe it is vital to our recovery. What does it mean to be a home group member? Here's a brief excerpt from the AA General Service Conference approved pamphlet on the AA group. Traditionally, most AA members through the years have found it important to belong to one group they call their home group. This is a group where they accept service responsibilities and try to sustain friendships. And although all AA members are usually welcome at all AA groups and feel at home at any of these meetings, the concept of the home group has still remained the strongest bond between AA member and the fellowship. With membership comes the right to vote on issues that might affect the group and might also affect AA as a whole, a process that forms the very cornerstone of AA's service structure. As with all group conscious matters, each AA member has one vote, and this ideally is voiced through the home group. Over the years, the very essence of AA strength has remained with our home group, which for many members becomes our extended family. Once isolated by our drinking, we find in the home group a solid, continuing support system, friends, and very often a sponsor. We also learn firsthand through the group's workings how to place principles before personalities in the interest of carrying the AA message. Talking about her own group, a member says, part of my commitment is to show up at the home group meetings, greet newcomers at the door, and be available to them. Not only for them, but for me. My fellow group members are the people who know me, listen to me, and steer me straight when I'm off in left field. They give me their experience, strength, and AA love, enabling me to pass it on to the alcoholic who still suffers. If you are interested in making the Treasure Map meeting your home group, stop over at the side table here at the break or after the meeting. I'd be more than happy to talk to you. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Dale as our short speaker for tonight. Help me to introduce him.
My name is Dale, and I'm an alcoholic. My sober date is July 26th of 2009. And by the grace of God and the fellowship of AA and the steps, I have managed to stay sober at this time. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I'm from Sioux Falls. I come from a fairly average working class family. And nothing really unusual about them. I mean, there's no real problems. And I remember the first time I got drunk, I was 13 years old. And a friend of mine had stole a bottle of lime vodka. And it was like at 8 o'clock in the morning, we started drinking that. And Lime vodka, as it turned out, wasn't exactly my favorite. And I thought, if you're in a liquor store, why would you just take lime vodka? But at any rate, I drank it, and all of a sudden that mental thing kicked in. I'd never felt that way in my entire life. It was amazing. And I thought to myself, I want to do this again. And I want to do it often. And of course, when you're 13, it's pretty hard to become a daily drinker right away. It was kind of a thought. But I never missed an opportunity. And throughout high school, I did it as often as I could, which typically was weekends. I started smoking weed, I believe, when I was probably about 14. That I pretty much did every day from that point forward. And it wasn't too long after I got going on those things when I was in high school. And I can't exactly pinpoint the year or what grade I was in, but it was kind of where the tail that wags the dog syndrome kicked in. I was no longer in charge. It was in charge of me. And I wound up not even graduating from high school. And my family got to a point where they wanted nothing to do with me. I can remember the day my dad asked me for the keys to my house and told me to get lost. And I did. And from the time I turned 18, I started drinking every day and every night. And it picked up to where, I would typically start at maybe, 7, 8 o'clock at night with my buddies, just hang out at the bar, and we go to 3, 4 in the morning. And I really, looking back, I don't know how the hell I did it. I mean, when I quit or came into the program, I weighed about 145 pounds. And this was just in the course of like 3 years. There was an incident I had in front of my apartment building, and the manager was a member of AA and also a friend. He came over and played poker with us when we had poker games at the place. And following that night that he found me passed out in front of the building, and it's pretty cold out, he came over and said, Dale, you need to do something about this, and I would like to take you to an AA meeting. And he by no means was the first person to suggest that to me. And Russ is a really nice guy, and I could kind of see where things weren't going real well. And I remember 2 of the points that he made to me on that before I get in is, he said to me, there are 3 things about alcoholism and partying. 1 is chronic. It's something that, if you've got a problem with it, it ain't going anywhere. And 2, it always gets worse. It never gets better. And the only option you got is to quit. And if you don't, it's not going to end well. And this was in 1975, so I went to my first AA meeting, and to me, it was God this, God that. I had resentment towards all that. I wanted to hear nothing of it. And I thought to myself, I'm really not that bad. I think I got this. I think I can manage this. And so I went, and I was out for another couple of years. And in that 2-year period of time, things deteriorated quickly, where I couldn't hold a job, didn't have a place to live, got my teeth kicked out of my head. Literally, I had a problem. When I drink, I quite often thought I would become smarter. And I thought it was only right that I would share that wisdom with other people, and it wasn't always well received. So anyway, some nights things didn't end well. But I think I got in trouble, and I went and saw this lawyer. And of course, he sat down and he asked me what happened. What it was a bar fight. And I was charged with simple assault, which was kind of serious. And I'd been to court a few times before that, which you keep showing up there too often, they get tired of looking at you. And I knew I was in some deep problems there. And so I told him, the circumstances behind it, and he asked how many times I'd been in jail or in trouble before that, and I explained it to him. And he said to me, "Are you drunk?" And my immediate thought was, why would you ask that? And anyway, he said, maybe what you should do is go down to this counselor guy and talk to him, because when you go to court, they're going to ask you to do that. And so I went and saw this guy, and it was kind of a rough meeting. I had a big mouth, and the visit didn't end well. He actually told me to go home and take my finger and stick it in a bucket of water. And if I pulled my finger out of the water, if there was still impression in the water from my finger, then I needed to discuss my problem no further with anyone. And of course, I didn't do that, but he said a couple things that kind of stuck with me. And one of them was, there is a solution to your problem, and that is you need to go to AA. And he didn't really elaborate beyond that other than to say that, I had a problem that was both mental, physical, and that AA was a spiritual solution to that problem. And so I took his advice and the lawyer's advice, and I went to my first meeting. And second meeting, I should say, excuse me. And when I was there, a couple things I noticed. Number one, most of the people there seemed to be relatively happy. They seemed to be leading decent lives. They weren't in the same kind of trouble I was. They had houses to live in. They had their teeth in their head, something I did not. And I thought I should listen. And so I did. And so I basically, for a couple, 2-3 weeks there, just stayed sober going to meetings. I didn't, get a sponsor, didn't really dig into the book or do anything with steps and that sort of thing. But I listened. And of course, being an alcoholic and the way I was, I went out and got drunk again. But I returned to AA, and not long after that, maybe within like a week. And I remember after the meeting one night, this old timer came up to me and he asked me how I was doing. And the truth was, I felt horrible. I was depressed. Things seemed as dark as they had ever been in my entire life. And I explained that to him. And I also went on to say, honestly, because things felt that dark, I said, I'm not sure I'm an alcoholic. And he said to me, well, tell me this, do you like our coffee? And I said, well, yeah, as a matter of fact, I do. But, he didn't get the point of what I was saying is that I felt that bad. And so I got a sponsor and went through the steps with him and started working the program and discovered the solution. And the solution was to find a power greater than myself that could restore me to sanity. And I think one of the important things about step 2 that I found is that, it didn't say restore me to sobriety. It said restore me to sanity. And, I had 2 problems. One, I was an alcoholic, but I was unmanageable, which also meant that, and I've heard this said in meetings before, and I think it really explains it very well, I had a thinking problem with a drinking solution. And there was only one way to overcome that sort of selfishness that I was driven by, and that was to have an ongoing, continuing relationship with a higher power. And so the prejudices that I had towards God, I had to back off of and have an open mind, and I did. And just like it says in the book that, when I started to seek God, he made himself available to me. I started to have that relationship. I went on, got my sponsor, did step 3, went and saw a minister. My sponsor at that time insisted that, he was very much a literalist, that you do the step with someone else, just as it says in the book. And so I went and saw this guy, and I read step 3 to him, and he was somewhat familiar with it. And he said, what you're doing here is you're embarking on a journey. This is by no means a destination. And I'm glad he said that because, it has turned out to be that. I don't think my spiritual awakening, that I've had or experienced was something that just hit me like a flashlight. It's been sort of a growing experience that I've grown into. And it's been a pretty good deal. I mean, I really enjoyed it. I've had my ups and downs, and I'm not the quickest learner. I'm a little stubborn. And I don't always do what I'm told. And sometimes I have to get beat down pretty good before I start to comply with it. But today, I think my life is fairly predictable. If I see a cop come down the street and he's got his lights on, my heart doesn't accelerate like it used to. If somebody knocks on the door, I go answer. And if there's mail in my mailbox, I go out, pick it up, and open it up. Those are things I didn't do before. Because I always had somebody chasing my ass, and I wasn't pretty. And so AA did 2 things. One, it helped me to overcome my drinking and pot smoking and drugging. And 2, it helped me to find a power greater than myself that I can have a relationship with and lead a good and decent life. And this worked out pretty well. Without, I'll pass, and I wish you all happy trails. Thank you.
Thanks, Dale. That was great. Appreciate it. But you did have me chasing you around too, trying to get you to share that. So, okay, we're going to take a short 10-minute break. Smokers outside the door there, mind your butts. And we'll meet back here for the remainder of our meeting. I'm excited to see. On TV. I have a master's degree. I don't do it. I'm a damage developer. But I have far been like crisis. Go back to school for something. I wouldn't think I really had that much love. I try to do some of the stuff. I did a couple more. Like, okay, one thing was when the meeting was open, yeah.
All right, real quick, I'm just going to put these flyers for our meeting next week over here on this table. So when we're done, the speakers will come up here and we can come and shake your hand when we're done. But as you're standing in line, if you want to grab one of these and take it with you, take it to your home group, take it to the meetings you go to get people to the picnic. All right, thanks.
Okay, it is my pleasure to introduce Matt M. as our long speaker tonight. Help me introduce him.
Hey everybody, I'm Matt and I'm a happy alcoholic. Wasn't real happy when well, you asked me to speak, and like the declaration says, when anyone anywhere reaches out, I want AA to be there. And my sponsor told me, when you get asked, you say yes. Mike asked me, but yeah, I can tell my story, you know, and it's tradition 7, 8, and 9. I'm going, but it is what it is, man. I say a prayer and I just ask God to use me as a messenger to carry whatever it is that needs to be said. And hopefully you hear something. I'm going to tell you, I am not good with microphones, number one. But I'm not here as a representative of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm just here as a member of AA and share a little bit of my experience with tradition 7, 8, and 9. My sobriety date is May 17th, 2004. But I came to AA in April 1st, 1991. So I've gone back out, and that is my story. But I've really immersed myself into this fellowship since my last relapse and really gotten involved in service work. And I believe the traditions involve a lot of service work. And my sponsor told me, he goes, I'm not going to sponsor you if you're not willing to do service work. He just told me flat out. That was a promise I had to make to him. And this is part of service work. So I just want to thank the Treasure Map meeting really quickly. This is not my home group. I'm a regular attendee of this meeting. I absolutely love this meeting. I wish our group would do a little more, kick it up a notch like this meeting does. But, you know, I do what I can at my group. And so it's nice to have this meeting to come to. So on traditions 7, 8, and 9, you know, I wanted to start off real quick because I don't know if a lot of people, I won't be critical. If you've never read the forward in the 12 and 12, I would highly encourage you when you go home tonight to read the forward in the 12 and 12. It is absolutely could do several topics in an AA discussion meeting on this forward. But, you know, I like how Bill and them discuss this, that there is a rising, and, you know, I'm going to do some reading tonight, guys, because I did a lot of research today. You know, I did a lot of looking around. I mean, I spent hours on this deal because I wanted to be prepared. And what I found was the best one who knew the most about it is the ones who wrote the 12 and 12. I can read other people's interpretations of it, but when you get down to the crux of the traditions, this is where the meat of it is and what the whole meaning of it is. So it says there is a rising interest in the 12 traditions. This is the forward of Alcoholics Anonymous. Students of human relations are beginning to wonder how and why AA functions as a society. Why is it, they ask, that in AA no member can be set in personal authority over another, that nothing like a central government can be anywhere be seen in Alcoholics Anonymous, and how can a set of traditional principles have no legal force at all or hold the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous in unity and effectiveness? The second section of this volume, though designed for, and it's talking about the traditions, and then it goes on. Alcoholics Anonymous began in 1935, Akron, Ohio, as the outcome of a meeting between a well-known surgeon and a broker, Bill and Bob. Both were severe cases of alcoholism when destined to become co-founders of AA Fellowship. The basic principles of AA as they are known today were borrowed mainly from the fields of religion, medicine, and through some ideas which success finally depended were the result of noting the anyways. After 3 years of trial and error and selecting the most workable tenets which the society could be based, and after a large amount of failure in getting alcoholics to recover, 3 successful groups emerged. The first at Akron, the second at New York, and the third at Cleveland. Even then, it was hard to find 2 sure recoveries in all 3 groups. So with the publication of Alcoholics Anonymous in 1939, that pioneering period ended and prodigious chain reaction set in as recovered alcoholics carried their message to still others. In the next years, alcoholics flocked to AA by the tens of thousands, largely as the result of excellent and continuous publicity freely given by magazines and newspapers throughout the world. Clergymen and doctors alike rallied to the new movement, giving it unstinted support and growth. This startling expansion brought with it very severe growing pains. And I'm kind of leading into why the traditions come about. Proof that alcoholics could recover had been made, so now we know how to recover. But it was by no means sure that such great numbers of yet erratic people, alcoholics, could live and work together with harmony and good effect. Everywhere there arose threatening questions of membership, money, personal relations, public relations, management of groups, clubs, and scores of other perplexities. It was out of this vast welter and explosive experience that AA's 12 traditions took form and were first published in 1946 and later confirmed at AA's first international conference held at Cleveland in 1950. So they've been around a very long time. The tradition section of this volume portrays in some detail the experience which finally produced the 12 traditions and so gave AA its present form, substance, and unity. As AA now enters maturity, it has begun to reach into 40 foreign lands. That was back in 93, 141 countries. In the view of friends, this is but the beginning. It is hoped that this volume will afford all who read it a close-up view of the principles and forces which have made Alcoholics Anonymous what it is. So I'm going to jump over to Tradition 7. I understand we've had 2 other meetings with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I now get to pick up at Tradition 7, 8, and 9. And, sorry. Tradition 7 states that every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. There's about a dozen words right there. Let me tell you, those 12 words or however many it is carry a whole lot of meaning. For not just the group of Alcoholics Anonymous, but for us as individual members in Alcoholics Anonymous and the worldwide fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. So self-supporting alcoholics, who ever heard of such a thing? Yet we find that that's what we have to be. We have to be self-supporting. This principle is telling evidence of the profound change that AA has wrought in all of us. Everybody knows that active alcoholics scream that they have no troubles that money can't cure. Always, we've had our hands out. So, you know, every group ought to be fully self-supporting. My understanding of Alcoholics Anonymous is GSO's at the top. You know, that's where the World Conference is. That's what holds everybody not accountable, but the guidance comes from GSO, and we have trustees and delegates from other regions and areas. So after GSO, then we get down to there's various regions that are set up. But in the United States, then we now have what are called areas. For South Dakota, it's Area 63. Then beyond, next below the areas is we have districts. For Sioux Falls and the surrounding communities, Chester, Flandreau, Coleman, even down to T is District 5. And then below district is the groups. South Side, Treasure Map, West Side, whatever meeting it is. and then we have the individual alcoholics. What I can tell you about self-supporting is if we don't support it, we won't survive. Just like the group won't support, it can't pay its rent, it can't pay the bills, it can't do this or that. The same thing with GSO. The Worldwide Fellowship Alcoholics Anonymous would crumble if we were not having that support. You know, I will tell you, Bill talks about early on how, I mean, this was a huge battle. I mean, me personally, I believe money is evil. It just brings out the nastiness in people. And when you have a lot of money involved in situations, I mean, just go to a business meeting for your group, you know, and see what money does. Or even outside of Alcoholics Anonymous, I mean, I'm involved in my church and we have money issues there. And it just can bring out some other sides of peoples and personalities, because everybody wants to be heard. Everybody thinks that they have the best thing, but you know, what we are is we're guided by love. We're guided by God. And, you know, there is no voice greater than another individual. Everybody has one voice in Alcoholics Anonymous. So, you know, Bill talks to about, you know, everybody was slow to pay. You know, they wanted to take care of their groups, but then they didn't want to have money to give to, and back in the day, it was called the Alcoholic Foundation. I think it was 1954 at the General Service Conference. They then called it GSO. But groups were not being supporting. And he gives some stories about it. The groups, Bill's right here. To my surprise, the response of the groups was slow. I got mighty sore about it. Looking at this avalanche of mail, because what he's referring to is Bill likes to tell the following pointed story. He explains that when Jack Alexander's Saturday Evening Post piece broke in 1941 with the story about Alcoholics Anonymous, thousands of frantic letters from distraught alcoholics and their families hit the foundation, which is GSO now, letterbox in New York. Our office staff, Bill says, consisted of 2 people, me and a secretary. He goes, how could this landslide of appeals be met? We had to have some more full-time help. That was sure, so we asked AA groups for voluntary contributions. Would they send us $1 a member a year? Otherwise, this heartbreaking mail would have to go unanswered. And I think what we have to remember when we're talking about mail not getting answered, emails not getting answered, is our primary purpose is to what? Help alcoholics to achieve sobriety. When people are writing into the General or the Alcoholics Foundation back then, now GSO, and we don't respond, we don't reply, our message and our primary purpose is not being met. We are not helping the alcoholics who are reaching out. So Bill talks about how they were being slow to pay. I paced up and down, ranting how irresponsible and tightwad my fellow members were. You know, and then he talks about how an old acquaintance came in, a chronic relapser, and Bill turned around and, you know, out of his generosity, he kind of equates to, you know what, I slipped him a $5 bill. But at the time Bill's talking about, he was only making, I want to say $30 or $35. I motioned him to inside the cubicle, produced a $5 bill, as my total income was $30 a week at that time. But he did it, as he explains, for kind of, you know, look what I've done, everybody, you know. But then Bill goes further into the story in this tradition, stating that he's sitting in the meeting later, and they're talking about the landlord would put us out if we didn't pay up. He concluded his remarks by saying, now, boys, please go heavier on that hat tonight. They used to pass a hat, will you? I heard all this quite plainly. I was piously trying to convert a newcomer who sat next to me. The hat came in my direction and I reached into my pocket, still working on my prospect. I fumbled around, and I like how he describes it here. I fumbled and came up with a 50-cent piece. And somehow that looked like a very large coin. So he put it back in his pocket and he reached in and he pulled out a dime. And he talks about how he put that dime and the tink it made when he dropped it into the hat. And then he kind of had that, I think that's what Bill is describing. He kind of had that aha moment. You know, I sit here and I give this man $5 here so he'll go around and tell everybody, look what Bill did, look what Bill did. But when the hat comes around, when our seventh tradition comes around and we reach in and we put that little amount in there, I think Bill's trying to bring home the message that we won't survive. We being Alcoholics Anonymous. So he goes, I, who had boasted my generosity that morning, was treating my own club worse than the distant alcoholics who had forgotten to send the foundation their dollars. I realized that my $5 gift to the slippee was an ego-feeding proposition, bad for him and bad for me. There was a place in AA where spirituality and money would mix, and that was in the hat, which is our seventh tradition that we pass around. So, you know, for me personally, you know, I came into Alcoholics Anonymous in 1991, 3 decades ago. I will tell you what was the accepted tradition back then. $1. Put a buck in the hat. You know, and I want to clarify real quick. I'm not here to condemn or criticize or be critical of anyone. I'm just here to share my experience on this tradition and what I did for a long time when the hat came around to me. And it was my time to pony up. I'd pony up a buck. And I found myself years later, decades later, still ponying up a buck for a program that saved my life. You know, I think of all the lawyer bills I had, the hospital bills I paid, you know, the divorce lawyer, all of that wreckage I created and caused as a result of my drinking and using. And I would willy-nilly pay that stuff, absolutely. It's necessary. But the very program that saved my life, I'd give you a buck. I was a guy who would spend hundreds, thousands of dollars sometimes during the week, drinking and using. And I go to 5 meetings, I give $5. And for me, I had to reevaluate that. Because here's what I know. I get it was an I mean, back 30 years ago, we would ask you if you could please put a buck in. We would ask that. But today, a buck doesn't go the same distance it used to go 30 years ago. And Edie, I don't know what was being given years ago, but, you know, I just know, me personally, my responsibility for me is to give back to this program so that it survives, both at the group level, the district level, the area level, and the GSO level. So I got involved in service work. I became a GSR, a group representative. I made sure our group was paying its contributions to those 4 entities: district, area, GSO, paying our bills, and then intergroup. I believe it is our responsibility, but if I put that money in the hat, I have the ability to identify where that money goes, and it's my responsibility to get involved. And I know this, I got involved and it helped me stay sober, man. I now got to understand the workings of Alcoholics Anonymous. I got to come around the backside and understand that this isn't just about just going to meetings, you know, and sharing a little bit in a discussion meeting or that. This is about saving millions of people around this world. And we've been doing it for 80 plus years. But we only do it because we are self-supporting. So I try to, you know, in my old home group, whenever we had a birthday and we would celebrate birthdays, we would give the individual an envelope for GSO. And it was suggested, put $1 in for every year of sobriety you got to go to GSO. I just know that this thing will not survive if we don't, you know, it's just like my sponsor said after my last relapse. Matt, if you don't kick it up a notch, you're not going to make it. That includes me financially. I've got to kick it up a notch financially, or I don't believe Alcoholics Anonymous will survive with everything has gotten more expensive. Rents, electric, the staff. So I wanted to share real quick before I do this summary, because I've got some notes about what GSO does, but there was a big issue. You know, one of the reasons the traditions came about was back in the day there was a lady who passed away, and she wanted to give in her will $10,000 to Alcoholics Anonymous. You know, and this created all kinds. That's why I said money can be evil at times. It created an uproar in Alcoholics Anonymous, and pretty soon they're going, we can't take it. We can't take it. People want to take it. Our bills will be paid. Bottom line is the decision was made. We cannot accept outside money. We have to be self-supporting. And I think Lois, Bill's wife, said it very eloquently. Purse strings can become ropes that choke us. And just like you see it, I equate it to like in our federal government. I work with federal regulations and that. I see the lobbyist. I see the deep pockets. I see them pushing through their agendas and getting what they want with bills passed. You see it in our society. Can you imagine if that happened in Alcoholics Anonymous? Where people with the deep pockets, the big checkbooks, got to influence people in Alcoholics Anonymous and say, you know what, we want this to go through. Well, that's our biggest contributor, you know. This thing would fall apart, I believe. That's why we have to be self-supporting. No one person is greater than the other. I don't care if you don't have a checking account or a savings account versus a guy who's a millionaire. It matters nothing in Alcoholics Anonymous. We all have the same voice, and that is one voice. One decision, but we as a group decide how this thing survives. But me personally, I have to dig deeper. So I downloaded this, excuse me, because it said it really very, very well. And it talks about contributions and self-support. So if anybody, you know, people wanted to leave money when they died, or loved ones would leave money for what Alcoholics Anonymous did to a loved one. But today, if you go to GSO or if you want in your will to give money to Alcoholics Anonymous, the greatest amount you can give, $5,000. They've capped it at $5,000, but we have that ability to do that if so desired. But I'll just read the 7th tradition. Every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. While contributions cover each group's rent and other expenses, the 7th tradition is essential at every level of AA service. It is both a privilege and a responsibility for groups and members to ensure that not only their group, but also their intergroup, central office, local services, district, area, and general service office remain self-supporting. This keeps AA free from outside influences that might divert us from our primary purpose to help all alcoholics who still suffer. We don't need people with deep pockets coming in here telling us what to do. This thing's working just fine. As long as we continue to contribute and maybe kick it up a notch to do the best we can to keep this thing going forward. So the amount of our contribution is secondary to the spiritual connection that unites all groups around the world. So, you know, we have a lot of financial issues at our club. You know, my home group is Westside. I sit on our Alano board. I've been involved as a DCM. Anyways, there's financial struggles everywhere. We have it at Area 63. We have it at our home group. I've now incorporated because the last 3 months we've had to dip into our prudent reserve because contributions are down. And I tell people, this club has been around for a very long time. It has saved thousands of lives. But if we don't kick it up a notch and throw a little more into that basket, we're not going to be around to save more lives. We will wilt away. And I don't ever want that to happen. So when I think about how much money I used to spend drinking and using, and then that basket comes around, I need to really look at myself and go, think about this. You know, I'll just tell you real quick. Yesterday I had a double root canal. All right. I don't want to lose my 2 front teeth. You know how much that cost me? $2,000. I paid that willingly. But that basket comes around, and the very program that saved my life, I'll throw a bucket. You know, I don't know. I changed this when I really realized what this program means to me and how much it is necessary for its survival. So, you know, anybody, please don't take any offense if whatever you contribute is greatly appreciated. There's no amount that is required or necessary. I just know I don't ever want to see this thing go away. So that's all I got on Tradition 7. Tradition 8 is Alcoholics Anonymous. And I knew I'd spend a lot of time on Tradition 7 because it involves money. You know, so Tradition 8 is Alcoholics Anonymous should remain forever non-professional, but our service centers may employ special workers. So I'll give a little input on this. Alcoholics Anonymous will never, and I highlighted that, have a professional class. We have gained some understanding of the ancient words, freely ye have received, freely give. We have discovered that at the point of professionalism, money and spirituality do not mix. Almost no recovery from alcoholism has ever been brought about by the world's best professionals, whether medical or religious. And this isn't here to knock them. I'm just telling you, personally, this is the deal that works. Others have been able to find recovery, and Bill says, our hat's off to you. But when you look at the numbers, nothing has been more successful than this program of Alcoholics Anonymous. We do not decry professionalisms in their other fields, but we accept the sober fact that it does not work for us. Every time we have tried to professionalize our 12th step, you know, have somebody sit in our meetings who's trying to tell people what to do is kind of where he's going with this. The result has been exactly the same. Our singleness of purpose has been defeated. Alcoholics simply will not listen to a paid 12-stepper. So Sponsy and I spoke at Keystone Saturday night. He talks about how he was on an IVC hold down in Yankton, involuntary committal. The family committed him. They put him on a hold. He's got to go to these counseling meetings. He sits down with the counselor and he looks at her and he says, you know, she goes, so what's your problem? And she's doing this, you know, intake on him. And I'm not knocking them. I'm just telling you, those words came true right there. Alcoholics simply will not listen to a paid 12-stepper. She's going, asking him. And he goes, excuse me, are you an alcoholic? And she says, no. And he goes, then what do you know about me? And she goes, well, I've studied. I have a degree. He goes, no. You may have a degree, but you don't understand me. And I get that. I've been involved in prison work for years. I took multiple meetings up to the hill behind the walls. I will tell you, they don't get it. The staff that's in charge up there, it's been a struggle. They have their way through books and their education. But we have that ability because we walked in the trenches. People understand another alcoholic. But I would watch these men go through that revolving door up on the hill. And even in Arizona, I was doing prison meetings down there. And I watched these guys go in and, you know, get close to their date, you know, and they would sit there, okay, so do we have this little plan down and this and that? But I'd never hear them say, are you going to go to AA? You know, they're in there because, yeah, they broke the law, but 95% of them, I believe, broke the law under the influence of drugs and alcohol. And then we're going to sit there and have this that doesn't even involve a 12-step program. No mention. And I'll tell you real quick, I got kicked out of the prison. And I get they got rules, but for years I was doing meetings up there and I started to sponsor men. and they told me that if I'm going up there, I can't sponsor men, and I just don't get it, you guys. And that's what I mean about they don't understand. You know, I go there, I get to know these men, I get to share their stories, and I want to take them through the steps. And one man asked for a chit to get out on a weekend to go to an AA meeting. And they said, do you have a sponsor? And they said, yeah, Matt. And I got a call from the head of the chemical dependency at the prison. And they said, you're no longer welcome here. You're sponsoring men. And it baffled me. I begged her not to kick me out of the prison, but you know, it's the rules. We have to abide by their rules. I just think there's a better way to keep men from that revolving door of the prison system if we focus on a 12-step program. I kind of get off the deal, but you know, it goes back to we are not professionals. Another thing that's always come up both in Arizona where I got sober and here is, you know, some people get upset when others go and seek employment, carrying the message of recovery to help others. Bear in mind, and Bill talks about it here in depth, because this has been happening for a very long time. And he says it is acceptable as long as they're not carrying the message, the name Alcoholics Anonymous. You can be employed after finding recovery, getting sober, learning what you learned, and go work in a corporation, because he talked about there was all these corporations who, a state drunk farm wanted a manager who could really handle inebriates. A city wanted an experienced social worker who understood what alcohol could do to a family. A state alcohol commission wanted a paid researcher. These are only a few of the jobs which AA members as individuals have been asked to fill. Now and then AA members have brought farms. So bottom line is, the question was, and sometimes still is, are such activities to be branded as professionalism under AA tradition? Bill says, we think the answer is no. They're not hanging the shield of Alcoholics Anonymous up there. We can't fault people who find recovery, who find God, from being helpful to others outside of Alcoholics Anonymous in the business world. It's totally acceptable. So, no, members who select such full-time careers do not professionalize AA's 12th step. The road to this conclusion was long and rocky, but at first we couldn't see the real issue involved. And then he goes on, the guy people would say, you know, more often than not, these onslaughts were spearheaded by the cry, professionalism. That guy is making money out of AA, yet not a single one of them had ever been hired to do AA's 12-step work. The violation in these instances was not professionalism at all. It was breaking anonymity. So it is significant now that almost no AA in our fellowship breaks anonymity at the public level, that nearly all these fears have subsided. We see that we have no right or need to discourage AAs who wish to work as individuals in these wider fields. It would be actually antisocial were we to forbid them. We cannot declare AA such a closed corporation that we keep our knowledge and experience top secret. If an AA member acting as a citizen can become a better researcher, educator, personnel officer, then why not? Everybody gains. And we have lost nothing. True, some of these projects, and then it goes down, our 12th step is never to be paid for. But those who labor in service for us are worthy of their hire. So, you know, my grant sponsor and my original sponsor, they do interventions down in Phoenix now. You know, they use what they've learned, but what they do is they guide these individuals to the solution. I see no harm in that. So, I will just say real quick, the central office survives off of group and member donations and literature sales. So, you know, sorry, hold on. So it says shall employ special workers. You know, so in AA, at the general service office. So, there it is. I'll give you a little bit of what goes on up there when you want to think about when our money is going for it. So each year, GSO staff, they respond. This is just GSO. They respond to over 90,000 emails and letters and phone calls from AA members and suffering alcoholics. Staff communications also help someone find AA meetings. GSO maintains and updates the AA.org website that averages 40,000 visits per day. GSO Publishing Department publishes and distributes all AA conference-approved literature. Approximately 8 million books, pamphlets, videos, and audio products are distributed annually. So it goes into corrections. You know, all of these committees fall under GSO. Helping in corrections, helping in the professional environments, CPC, all of these to the professional people. People who don't understand. That is part of what GSO does. That is what we do at area levels on committees, PCP, PI, corrections and treatment, and even those committees at the district level. Everywhere we're trying to fulfill our main primary purpose, which is to help alcoholics achieve sobriety. But it doesn't come without costs. And we don't do it as professionals. We do it as alcoholics. But we do have people. I mean, who's going to answer all those emails? You have to have a secretary. You have to have somebody in that office doing that. Who's going to mail out literature? You have to have bodies, guys. And are they considered professionals? Absolutely not. Do we pay them a salary? Yes. But they are performing work so that Alcoholics Anonymous primary purpose can be served. Okay? So they're not considered professionals. It gets into it in the tradition. And then tradition 9 is, sorry, I'm running long. AA as such ought never be organized, but we may create service boards or committees directly responsible. It is said that Alcoholics Anonymous needs the least possible organization. In years since then, we have changed our minds about that. Today, we are able to say with assurance that Alcoholics Anonymous, AA as a whole, should never be organized at all. Then, in seeming contradiction, we proceed to create special boards, committees. Bottom line is what they're talking about here is shall not be organized, but we can create these service boards. Yeah, that's so that primary message can be served. But when you talk about an organization or a corporation, Bill talks about it in here.